I feel like I don't hear nearly enough people talking about just how horrifying Calamity Ganon's design is. When I went into Breath of the Wild, I avoided Hyrule Castle like the plague. Not only was this thanks to its very menacing presence on Hyrule Field, but also the fact that I was afraid of spoilers, even though I had the game. I'm very sensitive about this stuff, okay? Yeah, so I'd heard in the pre-release coverage that you can take on Ganon at any point in the game, and I was afraid of stumbling upon him. I was afraid if I walked in the gate of Hyrule Castle, bang, Ganon would be right there, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So I didn't walk in the gates until the very end of the game. But when I did finally march up to the castle to take on Ganon, I wasn't expecting to find a giant cocoon of malice and ancient tech. Let alone have that cocoon burst, have Calamity Ganon drop down on me, and reveal its true form to be this. Let's just say it left quite the impression and was not whatsoever what I was expecting. While Calamity Ganon is portrayed as a very one-note villain in Breath of the Wild, not even really being a perceivable villain for most of the game, but more of a force of nature, Calamity Ganon still maintains to be one of this game's most interesting points of lore to explore based on the lack of clarification and contradictions on what little we know about it. As I said in my notes, Ganon always pig, but now spider? But it's true, since the very beginning Ganon has been depicted as a boar-like being. Seldom has the series swayed from that animal connection, but here in Breath of the Wild, we find ourselves fighting a Ganon that seems to be most closely modeled after a spider. So like I said, I freaked the heck out when the final battle was this amalgamation and not the pig form, or even the serpent form that we see flying around the castle most of the game. To be honest with you, that's what I thought it was going to be. Just this serpent-like vapor being that, you know, we'd fight around the castle, be like an overworld fight or something, not this. But I really think where this design comes from is the Sheikah technology, mostly the Guardians. First of all, the Guardians are integral to Breath of the Wild. They were the first enemy showed off for this game. They have such a presence around the world. They seem to be like this game's just favorite enemy. On top of that, if you look up at Ganon's cocoon in the Sanctum, you can see that there are Guardians hanging up there next to the cocoon, and when we finally get to meet this form of Calamity Ganon, yeah, he has Guardian arms and pieces just sticking out of his malice body everywhere, so it all kind of comes together there. I think it really was the Guardian and how much the developers loved that led to this spider form. But from a story perspective, it also makes a lot of sense since Ganondorf's plan is very centered on Sheikah technology. Before Ganon can make his new form and win, he has to take out the 4 superpowers of Hyrule, the Divine Beasts. And Ganon is all about power. I mean, it's in the name of his Triforce piece. So when he sees the most powerful technology Hyrule has to offer, who is he to deny its worth? Ganon can see the raw power of these Sheikah-built machines, and that's why he had to create the Blights to stop them, and why his new form is so focused on that machinery, because that's currently Hyrule's greatest source of power. I can only imagine how technology would be used and what it would look like in its finished form. Because if you remember, the first phase boss design, the spider one, is apparently an incomplete form according to the compendium entry. Ganon was still developing into something new when Link arrived at the Sanctum, forcing him out of his cocoon. And it just makes you think, what would that final form look like? How would technology be used there? Would Ganon just make himself a divine beast, basically? And I know there might be some of you out there that think the compendium was referring to the Dark Beast form, which we see in the second phase of this battle, but I'm not of that opinion. I really do think it was a different form that Calamity Ganon was going to take before Link arrived and Zelda's seal gave up, and he just kind of plopped out as is. And I said it in a kind of joking manner earlier, but I really don't think it's that far out of the picture to assume that he was making some kind of divine beast form, and that it was going to be very spider focused, like a giant guardian type form, which is, I mean, kind of what we get, but like even looking at that design, it looks very makeshift. Look at his face, it's still caved in and everything. Maybe that's just like the Ganon design motif, I guess. He just likes to be kind of rough around the edges, but I don't know. I feel like it wasn't finished. But while we're talking about these different forms, I do want to talk a little bit more about Ganon's serpent form around the castle, because what is it? If you read some of the text in creating the champion, it seems to suggest that this form was created as a result of Zelda sealing away Ganon. And it's a way of showing his power escaping and kind of just a cool way to say, hey, Ganon is always here. And yeah, I guess that's a good explanation, but I still feel like there might be something more there. Let's transition though and talk a little bit more about power, because Calamity Ganon is one of the only Ganons to straight up decimate Hyrule for an entire century. Yet, as we've learned from Breath of the Wild 2's teasers, Ganondorf still seemingly coexists in a weak corpse-like state. And this is when Calamity Ganon's existence and just what exactly it actually is comes under a lot more suspicion. One of the only Ganons to succeed in its mission of taking over Hyrule, and most certainly the one that held it for the longest. But how could Calamity Ganon be so powerful when it was split in such a way? Ganondorf, the man and usual vessel for Ganon, does not seem to be a part of Calamity Ganon in any physical way. One common theory on the relation between these two that many have taken to, myself included, is that Calamity Ganon was a sort of puppet for Ganondorf's corpse. Whether that means separating his soul from his body to become Calamity Ganon, a primal being made of pure malice, while still using Ganondorf's consciousness, or that Calamity Ganon is an extension of Ganondorf's hate that has become completely independent of the dying corpse. Yet I question the latter explanation, since how can Calamity Ganon be one of the most strongest Ganons in the Zelda series, while being nothing but a puppet and affording no sacrifice from its source, Ganondorf? You could say that the state Ganondorf is seen in here is the price he had to pay, have what looks like all but an ounce of his life being sucked out of him, but I'm more inclined to believe that Ganondorf's soul was with Calamity Ganon. Then we have this super important piece of dialogue right before the Dark Beast fight to talk about. A line that has a wildly different message between its English and Japanese translation. The English translation of this dialogue almost makes it sound like this is the end of the cycle, like Demise's curse is coming to an end and Ganon has finally given up on reincarnation to assume one final form, basically saying this is Demise and Ganon's one last hurrah. On the contrary though, the Japanese text emphasizes the opposite, that Ganon cannot be stopped and will continue to reincarnate endlessly in a fit of rage. So who are we to believe here? Well, I'm very inclined to believe the Japanese text, not just because that is the original translation, but also because of what we've already seen in Breath of the Wild sequel and its teasers. Ganondorf, who is the source of Ganon, is back in some form. So that seems to line up a lot more with the Japanese translation of this text. That Ganondorf is still obsessed and will stop at nothing to continue reincarnating, even if it somehow sends him back to a corpse of his from thousands of years ago. But there's one more piece to this puzzle we have to slot in, and that's with Age of Calamity. I know some of you might say you question how canon this game actually is, but in my eyes, it is canon. Like it or not, it doesn't have much of an impact on anything, but it can tell us a few key details to help us better understand Calamity Ganon in this case. So in Age of Calamity, there is no Spider Ganon form or Dark Beast forms. No, this time Ganon appears more humanoid, and I believe this is actually quite important. In Age of Calamity, Ganon does not spawn out of a cocoon, but erupts into this form after absorbing a Hylian, Aster. Now think about that for a minute. Calamity Ganon appears after Harbinger Ganon absorbs Aster. And instead of finding a Spider Ganon or Boar-like Ganon in this game, we find Ganon in a humanoid form. Now let's flash back for a second to Breath of the Wild, because as I mentioned earlier, in that game, Ganondorf seems to take a more spider-like form. And if you take the time to look up at his cocoon in the Sanctum, you'll find that there are deactivated guardians perched up by him. A form born out of absorbing Aster with more humanoid traits. A form found developing in a cocoon all around Sheikah technology, leading to a spider-like, technology-based form. Calamity Ganon is literally a force of nature. It has no corporal form outside of a long-abandoned corpse. Its consciousness resides in malice with no organic tissue to be found. To take up a form, the Calamity needs a host, whether that be Sheikah Tech in Breath of the Wild's case, or in Age of Calamity's, a Hylian. This extends out to how Ganon's malice can corrupt regular guardians and other Sheikah Tech. It even extends to how Aster uses malice. To create new versions of the Ganon Blights and Hollows, we see Aster attack the Yiga clan and use their souls as a host for these new malice creations. The only exception we see to this is Dark Beast Ganon, where there is no semblance of technology or tissue among Ganon's form. It is a pure malice phantom in the image of a boar. But I think the explanation for this goes back to what we already talked about with the Japanese translation of this dialogue. Ganon's pure insistence to reincarnate. When Dark Beast Ganon is defeated, it melts back into its serpent form and takes another swing at Zelda. The guy can just not stand down, and the way that he is finally defeated is by using Zelda's sealing power, which is implied to be some form of the Triforce. But then that brings up one final question. How does Ganon's consciousness return to its source? And how does malice already plague the land once again, just after Calamity Ganon? This is a question that I think will be at the heart of Breath of the Wild 2's story. How did Ganondorf, heir of the Gerudo, fall so far to create an unstoppable force of nature that uses a substance literally personifying hate? And why is it that after the beast was destroyed, he awoke in the body he'd severed his connection with. So, at this point in time, if I was to answer what is Calamity Ganon, I would say a force of nature. Malice containing Ganondorf's consciousness that will stop at nothing to destroy Hyrule, not even its own defeat. Hey guys, how's it going? Didn't expect to see you here. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can see when new videos come out and support me in making more new videos. Also, you can go watch some other videos that I made and like this video and comment down below what you thought about the video and turn on the notifications and do all that to also support me in making more videos. And I thank you very much for doing said stuff. Thank you. I hope you guys learned something new about Calamity Ganon today, or I was able to spark a new idea in your head about him. I don't know, man. He's such a confusing character to pin down. Is he even a character? I don't know. I think we made some pretty interesting connections today, though, and I would not be surprised if in Breath of the Wild 2, we see the same Calamity Ganon that we saw in the first game kind of just wake up in Ganondorf's body. So it's like the same destructive force that was Calamity Ganon, that same consciousness, but now back in the body of a Ganondorf. I think that could be what's happening. But we'll see. Oh yeah, this is also technically my first video of the spooky season. You're going to see a lot more spooky type videos coming up in the next few weeks. I'm super excited about what we have planned. So you want to stay tuned, I'm telling you right now. And to help you stay tuned, you can make sure you follow me on Twitter, XenoGamerYT, join the Discord server with the link in the description below, and come by the Twitch channel Friday nights for new streams. You guys know I appreciate you for coming by and watching today's video, but I want to say it again. I just want to say it 1,000 times. Thank you.
6.5 hours later.
Anyway, have yourselves a wonderful day, and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.